We start by getting to know our protagonist, Kinu Shinichi, reading an online job advertisement targeted at otakus. Intrigued, he takes the test for the position, which consists of 200 intricate questions that only a true otaku would know. Much to his surprise, he passes the test with a perfect score. As a result, we discover that he's a hardcore otaku. Later on, he receives a contact for an interview, where he meets Motoba Jinzaburo, his future boss. During the interview, Motoba explains the significance of his role for Japan, all while inviting him to enjoy a cup of coffee, which to Shinichi's astonishment ends up making him fall asleep. Later, he wakes up in an unfamiliar place attended by a maid who speaks a strange language. In order to bridge the language barrier, she offers him a ring which bestows upon its bearer the ability to understand other languages and be understood in return. Now able to communicate, she explains that he is her master. Soon after, Minori, a first-class soldier from Tokyo's 1st Division, introduces herself as his security guard. To help him grasp the situation, Minori leads him to the balcony, where he gazes upon the Ratatosk Forest, the capital city of the Holy Elden Empire. The breathtaking view leaves Shinichi in awe, especially when he spots a dragon soaring through the sky. Later, they attend a meeting with the chief, where he explains to Shinichi that they are in another dimension, which they access through a hyperdimensional portal discovered on Mount Fuji in Japan a year ago. Since then, they have been working on improving diplomatic relations and exchanging knowledge. Shinichi's role will involve exporting entertainment content from Japan, such as anime, manga, and video games, as the general manager of a Mutech. Feeling overwhelmed by the responsibility, Shinichi initially declines the offer. However, since he has no way of returning home, they assure him that staying will be fine. He is told that he just needs to continue being an otaku and teach their new allies to become otakus as well. Later, Musil pays him a visit, bringing him tea. Suddenly, Shinichi notices her pointed ears and realizes that she is an elf, which makes her feel embarrassed as elves are not treated well in that place. Nevertheless, Shinichi tells her that he finds it cool and even asks for a photo. Although she doesn't understand, he demonstrates how his cell phone works and teaches her Japanese writing. We also meet Blook Darwin, another servant of the household, who assures Shinichi of his availability to assist him. The next morning, Shinichi gets ready because he has to go to the palace with the others. On the way, Minori advises him not to do or say anything strange that could offend the supreme leader, as their relationship with the kingdom depends on it. So when they arrive, Shinichi mimics Minori and Chief Motoba's actions. However, when the supreme leader addresses them, Shinichi realizes that she is a girl and tries to look at her. But he is luckily stopped by Minori until the supreme leader gives him permission to look at her, and then it happens. Possessed by fetish, he exclaims loudly, "A little girl." Awakening the fury of the supreme leader, she rises from her throne in a rage, accusing him of insolence and proclaiming herself an adult, as she is already 16 years old, and she slaps him across the face. Shinichi falls to the ground in pain, yet enchanted by the girl as he has a fondness for small girls. Fortunately, Motoba lends a helping hand and clarifies that they consider someone an adult at the age of 20. Additionally, Shinichi is taken aback by her beauty, and this convinces her. Minori then takes charge of telling Shinichi who each person is. The supreme leader is named Petrarca Ann Elden Iva, her cousin and royal knight is Garius and Goldball, and the advisor is Zakar. Garius underestimates Shinichi due to his youth and believes he won't contribute significantly to cultural exchange. However, Shinichi stands up and points out that someone who judges without knowing is a fool, unwittingly calling Garius a fool indirectly. Garius draws his sword and is about to attack, but the advisor intervenes while Petrarca bursts into laughter and gives her blessing, praising his courage. Later, the team brainstorms ways to spread otaku culture as entertainment without language barriers, as translation rings don't work for virtual audio-visual content, and many are illiterate to understand subtitles. That night, Shinichi can't sleep, so he goes for a glass of water and finds Musil studying in the kitchen. Seeing her so determined, he offers to help her, so they study together for a few nights. After several days of work, Shinichi successfully sets up a dedicated space for otaku culture with the selected material and invites his servants to try it out to gauge their reaction. Suddenly, they hear a familiar voice. It's Petrarca, who enters the room and starts looking at the entire exhibition, becoming particularly interested in the manga. Since she can't read it, she asks Shinichi to read it to her and dismisses the rest of the room, except for Musil. So Shinichi reads a manga for Petrarca that seems to greatly interest her. At one point, he asks Musil to read a part, and upon understanding it, they start discussing kanji and their meanings. Shinichi also congratulates Musil on learning to read. However, Petrarca becomes increasingly annoyed as the reading is interrupted, and she's also jealous because she doesn't understand anything. So she dismisses Musil and asks for tea. Then Petrarca sits on Shinichi's lap to get a better view of the book as he continues reading. Shinichi is nervous but continues reading for hours. Later, something catches Shinichi's attention, and upon entering the room, he sees gigantic red eyes that startle him so much that he strikes out only to realize that it's Blook. He quickly apologizes for hitting him, but Blook suggests using a stick if he truly wants to punish him. Shinichi is taken aback, but Musil, who happens to be passing by, confirms that it's normal for masters to strike their servants. This saddens Shinichi, but he comes to understand that he's in a very different place from his own country. Another day, Shinichi goes out to explore the village, noticing that children are trained from a young age to become soldiers and have little time for themselves. Later, Petrarca pays Shinichi a visit, asking him to read manga to her. Just when they reach an interesting part, Musil interrupts them by bringing tea. This angers Petrarca, and she confronts Musil with hurtful words. She's about to throw a pastry at her when Shinichi steps in, expressing his displeasure with her behavior. However, he remembers that mistreating servants is common in this place. So he attempts to change her perspective in a more subtle way, conveying that freedom, justice, and equality are the foundation of the stories she enjoys so much in manga. He hopes that she might follow his example. Petrarca doesn't fully grasp the message, but at least he manages to get her to leave Musil alone. In return, she asks Shinichi to teach her how to read and write in his language. At night, Minori senses being watched, but upon checking and seeing a lizard, she dismisses her suspicion, thinking it's merely the creature. Meanwhile, Shinichi discovers Musil in the Otaku gallery, engrossed in reading a manga that has stirred her emotions as it touches upon themes she has experienced herself. A month later, we see that Shinichi has been overseeing the construction of a school for all citizens regardless of their social class. Then he is visited by Petrarca, who comes to show off her progress in learning Japanese, wanting to prove that she has surpassed Musil. However, her pronunciation is poor and nothing she says can be understood. Later, as has become customary, Shinichi is reading manga to Petrarca and some noble children from the city, and he can't wait for the school to open so he can reach more kids. As they leave, Petrarca mentions that she appreciates how he seems to enjoy his work unlike those who work only for money, so she enjoys his company. However, Shinichi puts his foot in his mouth again by saying that he's very comfortable with her, but also includes Musil. At night, he goes to study with Musil, and she asks him to listen to her speak what she has learned. She does it very well, so he congratulates her. She confesses that she wants to speak Japanese fluently because she would like to go with him when he returns to his world, leaving him speechless. A few weeks later, the school is ready and opens its doors for the children to see. Later, Musil arrives with the lunch she forgot at home, and shortly after, Petrarca comes to see the school and to show off her progress in Japanese writing, surpassing Musil. However, Shinichi justifies Musil by explaining that she has much less time to study because she is always working, which greatly angers Petrarca. She claims that he praises and pays more attention to Musil than to her. Suddenly, they are surprised by a group of radical patriots led by Beidona. They kill the royal guard, kidnap Petrarca and the others, and restrain them. Their translation rings are taken away so they can't understand, but Musil acts as a translator. They learn that the radicals have stolen a powerful weapon and plan to detonate the school with them inside. Their goal is to eliminate anyone who tries to influence or change their culture and traditions. The individuals intend to eliminate Shinichi, whom they label as an invader, in order to protect their culture and political interests from any potential changes. However, Petrarca intervenes, stating that it would only turn him into a martyr. So they push Shinichi aside and target Petrarca instead. Shinichi falls onto Minori, who seizes the opportunity to ask him to retrieve the concealed knife tucked between her bosom. Once successful, Minori cuts the rope that binds her, and they devise a plan. So Shinichi claims an urgent need to use the restroom, allowing him to leave the scene. Unbeknownst to the antagonists, he is eagerly awaiting the alarm set for 7 p.m., which reminds him of his favorite anime character's birthday. He utilizes this moment to make it seem like he is performing a magical act, also serving as a signal for the girls to come to their aid after breaking free from their restraints. Minori showcases her swordsmanship skills, while Musil employs her magic, resulting in the defeat of their adversaries. However, the leader activates the magical weapon to wreak havoc, but Shinichi unexpectedly employs a simple fire extinguisher to quell the flames, astonishing everyone. Regrettably, Beidona rises once more, seeking revenge and hurls a knife at Petrarca, but his aim is thwarted by Musil, who steps in front of Petrarca to protect her life. Petrarca gazes at Musil in despair, regretting her previous mistreatment, and asks her why she did it, and Musil responds that she read in a manga that those of high status eventually learn to understand others. Petrarca calls her foolish, but tearfully orders her to hang on and not die. They immediately tend to Musil, and fortunately, she gradually recovers. 1 month later, Shinichi goes to the school for his first day of teaching Otaku culture. Upon entering the classroom, he realizes that bringing together students from different social classes and species will be challenging initially, as he has to address their prejudices. Minori restores order and introduces him to the class, and Shinichi begins the lessons. Later, Musil returns home to find everything in disarray as there was little cleaning done during her absence. She cleans everything thoroughly and attends to Shinichi while listening to how his teaching went at school. The next day, Shinichi teaches them terms like Zettai Ryuiki, absolute territory, referring to the area of a girl's leg between the hem of the skirt and the start of her stockings. Hatene, not wearing any, is a term that suggests uncertainty about whether a girl is wearing underwear because it can't be seen. However, Minori interrupts him as this content seems too advanced for them. Shinichi takes a break, and Minori continues by teaching terms like Sauyuk, total bottom, referring to a man who is loved by other men, and BL, an abbreviation for boys love, which denotes a romantic relationship between two men. She mentions that sometimes it doesn't only refer to romance, and is about to show them a manga with more content, but Shinichi stops her. She persists with the term Otoko no ko, traps, prompting Shinichi to intervene again. Later, they discuss what other topics they can teach, but their conversation is interrupted by an alarm on Minori's phone. It appears that there is an intruder around their house. Upon arrival, they come face to face with a wolf girl, whom they bring in for questioning. The girl introduces herself as Elbia Haneman and claims to be an artist. However, Minori suspects that she might be a spy from the neighboring kingdom of Betrayal, which borders the Elden Empire, but Shinichi believes in her innocence. Shinichi and Minori request an audience with Petrarca, who has been staying within the palace due to recent incidents. After catching up, Shinichi brings up the artist, explaining that he needs her to create drawings and manga for their own realm. He requests that she be placed under his care. However, Petrarca suspects that Shinichi's interest in the artist is due to attraction, teasing him about being captivated by her ample bosom. Shinichi denies this, claiming that her is small, so Petrarca decides to summon the prisoner to settle the matter, putting Shinichi on the spot. Despite his persistence, Garius denies Shinichi's request, stating that they still need to interrogate her to determine if she's a spy. Shinichi comes up with a clever plan to prove the artist's loyalty by asking her questions that inadvertently confirm her role as a spy, reporting everything she sees. Realizing this, Shinichi suggests an alternative approach, to turn her into a double agent, feeding their enemies false information that will mislead them. Garius finds this idea ingenious, and even Zakher supports it, so Petrarca reluctantly agrees to place the artist under Shinichi's care. Elbia turns out to be quite skilled at drawing anime characters, much to Shinichi's satisfaction. He leaves her alone to work, but we start to notice that Elbia is behaving strangely. That morning, Shinichi teaches the students about video games, specifically the ones where the main character is a beautiful woman. He shows them some examples along with their synopses and displays a sample game on the screen. Later, Minori asks Shinichi if he's going to teach BL, but he declines. Back at home, Shinichi notices that Musil now has more laundry to do because Elbia often gets charcoal stains on her clothes. Musil feels a bit sorry for not being able to assist him like Elbia does, but she understands that she indirectly supports him. Shinichi reassures her that everything is organized and set up for him to work thanks to her, so he expresses his gratitude for her help. Later, Elbia hasn't come out for dinner, so Shinichi goes to her room and she promptly kicks him out, behaving in a very strange manner. The next day, Shinichi comes across his students engaged in a heated argument over their preferences in video games and anime, until Minori stops them with a warning. Following this, Shinichi realizes that they're becoming otakus quite rapidly. It appears to have an effect on the palace as well, with Petrarca displaying a more tsundere behavior and Garius seemingly taking an interest in BL manga after Minori lends him one for that purpose. At night, while studying with Musil, Shinichi recalls Musil's desire to accompany him to Japan, so he asks her about it and she reaffirms it. Much later, Shinichi has a dream about Musil's request, but she transforms into Elbia and attempts to kill. However, the worst part is that upon waking up and opening his eyes, Elbia is actually on top of him in his bed. Shinichi screams, drawing everyone's attention, and as they enter the room, their initial thoughts align with what their eyes suggest. Nevertheless, Elbia regains her senses and apologizes, explaining that she is currently in her mating season, something that male and female wolves can hardly control. At the school, it has become a common occurrence for the students to argue over trying to assert their preferences above others while also discriminating against each other, until Minori intervenes. Later, the new items from Japan arrive, and Minori receives her limited edition item, an anime series collectible ball. However, Elbia becomes so intrigued by it that her instinct takes over and she goes after it like a puppy chasing a toy. Minori is furious, but eventually realizes that Elbia is genuinely happy and energetic while playing, so she decides to sacrifice her ball and gives it to Elbia. This incident inspires Shinichi to suggest organizing a friendly soccer match among the students at the school as a way to release tension and resolve their differences. After presenting the idea to Petrarca, she grants permission to build the soccer field and everything gets underway. At the school, Minori prepares the students by showing them soccer anime and organizing group practices. On the day of the match, everyone is filled with anticipation. Quickly, the dwarves take the lead with their strong legs, while the elves, being lightweight, struggle to block the attacks and are being brutally overwhelmed. The coaches discuss how to level the playing field as the dwarves' strength gives them an advantage, and they agree to allow the elves to use their magic. Then the match becomes more even, but with all those skills, the soccer field turns into a battlefield, with both teams giving their all until they are so exhausted that they can't continue. However, the score remains tied, so Rodic and Romilda make a final effort to stay on their feet and go after the ball, aiming to secure victory for their teams. However, unexpectedly, Elbia reaches the ball first and starts playing with it, which sparks Petrarca's interest, prompting her to join the game. She enters the field and takes the ball away from Elbia. With Musel's magic assisting her, Petrarca manages to outpace Elbia, and from the air delivers a precise kick that sends the ball straight into the goal. Petrarca is so delighted that she rushes over to celebrate the goal with Musel, all in plain view of the townspeople who witness the example of how even the supreme leader can get along well with the most discriminated species, a half-elf human. Shinichi now faces a very different problem. The staff is mixing up the orders, causing him to receive the wrong Anon titles. As a solution, he suggests going to Japan himself to purchase them. Chief Motoba arranges everything for Shinichi to be put to sleep and transported, so after taking the drug, Shinichi says goodbye to Musel. She's worried that her master might not return, so she manages to hide in his luggage and accompany him to Japan. Once Shinichi opens his eyes, he finds himself in his old room, but he quickly notices some movement and discovers Musel. She apologizes for sneaking along, but she's also eager to learn about this world. So Shinichi suggests that she join him in buying the items he needs, and they head to an area filled with manga, anime, and video game stores. They pause to enjoy some pasta and finally enter a maid cafe where they serve food with custom ketchup drawings. Shinichi orders the face of his favorite character, and Musel requests a drawing of her master's face, making her feel a bit reluctant to eat it afterward. After that wonderful day, they return to Shinichi's room, and he becomes nervous when he finds himself alone with Musel, imagining various scenarios that could unfold, especially when Musel offers to prepare a warm bath for him. Later, Shinichi asks if she brought a change of clothes, and since Musel didn't bring any luggage, Shinichi offers to buy her some wear while she takes a bath. Shinichi is embarrassed to buy so he tries to return quickly. Upon arriving, he finds Musel asleep. He then places her on his bed, but before covering her, he notices that she's wearing a shirt that says, "Be true to your desires," tempting him. However, Musel talks in her sleep and wakes Shinichi from his thoughts, so he covers her up to let her sleep. Finally, Shinichi opens his eyes again the next day, finding himself back in his room in the Elden Empire. However, he now has to confront his boss as he got so caught up that he didn't buy what he was supposed to. Fortunately, they're not completely empty-handed, as Musel brought back the idea of creating ketchup drawings on food. Far from it, Petrarca has her own problems. She is a busy and dedicated leader, but all the work has pushed her to the brink of stress, reaching a point where she can't take it anymore. She locks herself in her room under a spell that prevents any Eldantian from entering, refusing to come out for any reason whatsoever. Given the situation, our protagonist is called upon to try his luck with Petrarca. Shinichi mentions that what Petrarca is experiencing is a case of hikikomori, and Minori seizes the opportunity to claim that Shinichi is an expert in the matter, leading them to put him in charge of the situation. In private, Garius confesses to Shinichi that Petrarca ascended to the throne at a very young age because Garius' own parents were responsible for the assassination of Petrarca's parents. Since then, she has carried that sorrow and the burden of her empire. Shinichi successfully convinces Petrarca to let him in and spend some time together. As he enters, he notices several details. A genuine hikikomori has all the necessary things within reach, so Shinichi rearranges the room, surrounding the bed with manga and video games. He also offers to guide Petrarca in becoming a true otaku hikikomori, causing Minori to question whether it was a good idea to let Shinichi take charge, as Petrarca spends her entire day playing video games, eating junk food, and reading manga whenever she gets bored. As night falls, Musel learns that her master won't be coming home, as she'll be spending the night with Petrarca. This news sends her mind into a state of lethargy, disconnecting her from reality. Meanwhile, Petrarca is still lazing around but decides she wants to take a bath, so they sneak out of the room and Petrarca indulges in a relaxing bath. Upon returning, Petrarca overhears the guards expressing concern for her, which prompts her to reflect momentarily. Due to this, while playing, she expresses the desire to have a conversation with Shinichi. He opens up about how people often slip into becoming hikikomori progressively without even realizing it, just as he did. He shares that after being rejected by his childhood friend, he began skipping classes due to the embarrassment, gradually distancing himself from his peers. As he became more accustomed to solitude, he found comfort in being alone and not having to interact with anyone. Shinichi explains that many hikikomori aren't in that situation by choice, but rather because they become trapped in it. Realizing what she's been doing and feeling a sense of guilt, Petrarca doesn't want to remain trapped in her room, neglecting her duties any longer. As a result, the next day when Shinichi awakens, he finds Petrarca standing before the door, grappling with the decision to step outside until she finally succeeds. Upon opening the door, her advisors are waiting outside, and with a determined spirit, she instructs them to accompany her as she sets out to work. To prevent the situation from recurring, the advisors reorganize Petrarca's day, ensuring that she doesn't become overwhelmed with her responsibilities and allowing her some moments of leisure. On their part, our ambassadors also plan their vacations, so Garius arranges for them to stay at one of Petrarca's properties by a lake, and Shinichi is excited because he will finally have his bikini episode. At the lake, the first one to approach is Minori, although Shinichi didn't even notice it was her because he was busy staring at her chest instead of her face. On the other hand, Elbia is happily digging a hole in the sand, dressed in a cute red ensemble. Then Musil timidly approaches, wearing a simple yet lovely white bikini that Shinichi really likes. As for Petrarca, she's also getting ready to join them, finishing up her duties while her attendants find her a swimsuit. At the lake, Minori asks Shinichi to help her apply sunscreen, which he does with difficulty while trying to focus on the task. Later, he invites Musil to play in the water, just like in anime, so they give it a try. Afterwards, everyone enjoys some onigiri together. As they're savoring the food, Roig comes running, urgently requesting help because they've been attacked and Romilda is in danger. It turns out that both of them had heard about the teacher's excursion, so Roig wanted to see Minori, whom he has a crush on. Romilda followed him, suspecting he was just trying to sneak a peek at the girls in bikinis. However, Romilda fell into a magical trap set by some strange beings. Now, everyone prepares for the rescue mission, ambushing the enemies. Despite putting up a fight, the adversaries are eventually captured and surrounded. However, it turns out that they aren't magical at all. They were just Japanese military personnel disguised in camouflage. So Minori demands an explanation from them while Musil quickly seeks refuge behind her master, thanking him for trying to protect her. Unfortunately, due to the commotion, the top part of Musil's bikini loosens and falls to the ground, prompting a magical reaction from her. Subsequently, Minori discovers that the soldiers possess a sophisticated video camera, which contains none other than pictures of all the girls in their bikinis. In response, she destroys the camera and gives the soldiers what they deserve. Later on, the scholars have finally found the suitable swimsuit for Petrarca, and she's ready to join the beach day. The next day, Minori has a clothing mishap, so she ends up wearing the clothes borrowed from Musil, although they fit her quite snugly. Chief Motoba seeks out Minori and Shinichi with some bad news. The video clips filmed during the friendly match between the students are leaking in Japan, posing a serious risk to the secret of the world they are in. However, Shinichi comes up with a brilliant idea, creating a film for the public that portrays the leaked scenes as part of the movie. In this way, the preparations begin, and Shinichi asks Petrarca to be the heroine of the story. Chief Motoba orders the construction of the set, and the students help with costumes and the film's script. They also attempt to acquire a real dragon with the assistance of Luna, an expert dragon tamer who advises them to keep any kind of aerosol product away from the dragons, as they irritate their senses and make them furious. However, Minori's sweating applies antiperspirant, resulting in the dragon roasting them. Ultimately, they settle for using a prop dragon for the film. On the day of the shoot, the girls are on their break and Shinichi goes to see them. However, he walks in on them while they're changing, and he startles. Musil becomes nervous, but the others continue to act naturally, chatting with him as if nothing unusual is happening. In an attempt to fit in, Musil intentionally drops her clothes, adding to the chaos. As a result, Shinichi begins to suspect that he's in a place where everyone has truly lost their minds. Petrarca films her transformation scene, which later turns out really well after editing. Then it's time to shoot the dragon scene. Luna warns them to be cautious due to another dragon nest nearby, but Minori continues using her antiperspirant. When the moment arrives, they set up the tanks and send out the mechanical dragon. But to their surprise, a real furious dragon appears instead, triggered by the aerosol. Luna attempts to calm it with her magical voice, but it proves ineffective. Fortunately, Darius arrives on the scene with his troops. Excited, Petrarca assumes it's all part of the special effects, and Shinichi struggles to get close to her to warn her otherwise. The military rushes to fire at the dragon using the tank's weaponry, and luckily manage to scare it off, leaving the soldiers astounded as they didn't have to engage in a battle. Petrarca, having witnessed the spectacle up close, is amazed by the explosions, still unaware of the reality behind the scenes. The following night, they held a screening of the movie for the Eldenans, and everyone seems delighted. However, a scene featuring Petrarca looking particularly adorable makes her incredibly embarrassed. She throws a tantrum, demanding that the movie be stopped at once. Nonetheless, the film was distributed throughout Japan, successfully passing as an authentic production. It was eventually canceled due to its similarities with other movies, which was actually part of the plan to safeguard the secret of the Holy Elden Empire. Returning to normalcy, Shinichi observes how the school has made significant progress and he feels proud of it. Edward, the student who assisted with the movie script, has become a light novel translator and has even ventured into creating his own light novel. However, a problem arises. There's a decreasing supply of manga and otaku material, which falls short of the students' high demand. As a result, Edward is forced to translate at an increasingly rapid pace without rest, as his friends eagerly await his work. Moreover, everyone is so engrossed in their newfound passion for manga that they are becoming accustomed to focusing on these new hobbies, gradually setting aside their own traditional customs and responsibilities. This worries Shinichi greatly, prompting him to have a conversation with his boss. To his astonishment, he finds Motoba quite satisfied with the unfolding situation. It turns out that Motoba's intention all along was to make the people of Elden dependent on what they bring from Japan. He reveals that they have been using culture as a weapon, strategically teaching the illiterate Eldenans to read and write in Japanese before their native language. This way, the population can only consume Japanese content, and the government can manipulate their demands in exchange for providing what the Eldenans desire. This scheme was part of a larger plan to eventually invade Elden. Shinichi is left feeling utterly disappointed and betrayed, especially when he learns that he was chosen precisely because he fit the profile of someone they could easily dispose of. Shinichi is baffled, as Petrarca is utterly fascinated by Otaku culture. She lists all the benefits it has brought to her people and reveals her plan to spread it throughout the entire country, leaving Shinichi agitated as he envisions the potential issues this could cause. However, refusing to support further dissemination of Otaku culture poses a serious problem for him. The government is pressing for him to complete his task nationwide, and failing to do so could easily lead to his replacement. Later, he steps out of his room to talk to Musil, but she insists on serving him dinner first. She expresses how everything he has done in Elden has been beneficial, emphasizing how she now knows how to read and write and how he has brought new experiences to every Eldantian. Her words instill in him the courage to strive for the greater good. Therefore, the next day, he joins his boss to meet with Petrarca, presenting a plan to expand Otaku culture across the entire country, putting Motoba at ease. Unbeknownst to Motoba, Shinichi's true intention is for the Eldantians to create their own manga and anime, freeing them from dependence on Japanese imports. Motoba is left in shock, unsure of how to react, while Petrarca embraces the idea enthusiastically, and everyone else supports and celebrates Shinichi's ingenious proposal. The next day, we witness a group of thugs infiltrating Shinichi's room. As they prepare to carry out their mission, they realize that he isn't in bed. To their surprise, they are not alone. A formidable elite force, disguised as servants, surrounds them and captures them, all of whom were sent by Petrarca. We also come to know that the eyes that spied on Minori that time belonged to a type of owl that Petrarca employs as spies and messengers. Following the incident, Motoba pleads for Petrarca's forgiveness, claiming that the attack was carried out by a group of radicals who saw Shinichi as a threat to the Japanese government. Although she still harbors doubts, Petrarca chooses to believe him. However, she orders the elite force to keep a close watch on Shiniki day and night from now on. As days go by without any further incidents, the security around Shiniki is gradually lifted, and then an explosion rocks one of the walls in the castle, alerting both the guards and Petrarca. She quickly reaches out via owl call to Shinichi's residence to confirm if they are also under attack. However, the source of the commotion is the school building, where smoke is billowing out. Shinichi rushes there to save an extremely rare and seemingly impossible to find limited edition item that suspiciously arrived on that very day. As the others suspected, it's a trap, and Shinichi falls right into it. Some soldiers capture Shinichi and make him unconscious and lock him inside the blazing library. Meanwhile, Minori is facing her own troubles as Motoba and a group of men capture her. On their end, Musil, Elbia, and Bluk set out to rescue Shinichi. Bluk creates a hole in the wall to cut through, while Elbia takes care of the guards, allowing Musil to reach Shinichi. Yet despite her efforts, she can't wake him, and to make matters worse, a bookshelf collapses on them. Musil strains to hold it with her magic. Elbia fights valiantly, but a soldier manages to incapacitate her with an electric shock. However, just as a soldier takes aim at Elbia's head, he falls to the ground, neutralized by none other than Minori, who's back in action. Meanwhile, Musil continues struggling to bear the weight of the bookshelf until she collapses. Fortunately, the girls arrive just in time to rescue both of them. At that moment, Motoba arrives on the scene, warning them that they're now in serious trouble with the government. However, Shinichi insists on speaking directly to his superior. The following day, Motoba arranges a video call, revealing that they had internet access all along. Shinichi then speaks with the politician, who offers him a peaceful return as a final chance. However, Shinichi is skeptical, knowing that an accident could befall him. The politician gives him one last opportunity to apologize and continue in his role, but Shinichi understands the implications and confronts him. It's then that he reveals his true intentions, threatening to easily eliminate him. And this is when Shinichi smiles, as Petrarca had been listening the whole time, and now she speaks to the man through her owl, accusing him of being the villain. He then asks whose voice that is, and Shinichi reveals that it's the supreme leader of the Holy Elden Empire. The man then asks Motoba for an explanation, as it seems to be the voice of a native speaker, but he responds that he forgot to mention he actually did it on purpose, that Petrarca is now fluent in Japanese, implying that Motoba always had his own intentions and never fully supported his government's actions. Later, Petrarca appears in person and approaches to join the video call, making it clear that she's aware of the attacks against Shinichi and the intentions of the Japanese government. She issues an ultimatum demanding the expulsion of anyone who threatens Shinichi and his country, so the Japanese leader assures her that there is no reason to send Shinichi back to Japan. Finally, Shinichi remains in Elden, and one day, as he watches the school's reconstruction, he seems about to confess his feelings to Musil. However, their moment is interrupted by Elbia, who announces that Petrarca is requesting his presence. At the castle, he meets with Motoba, who has faced the consequences of his complicity and is now under the watchful eye of Petrarca's warriors. Motoba warns Shinichi that while the government will allow him to continue overseeing imports, it will eventually restrict the budget. Shinichi understands, but he's at ease, knowing that the solution would always be to create their own content. He thanks Motoba for his behind-the-scenes assistance and congratulates him for being an agent of change. And the anime concludes with the students returning to class and are so adept that even Romilda notices a writing mistake made by Shinichi.